You're very welcome along to the Matchbook Football Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, and joined by Mark O'Haire and Adrian Clarke. And we couldn't wait to the weekend this time. We had to bring the lads back for bonus midweek Premier League action and a lot on the line. Mark, before we get going, you're not generally an FA Cup watcher, or you try to stay away and maybe take as much of a break as possible. But even you got caught up with Sunday for as bad as maybe, or as one-sided as Saturday was. And as someone who had to sit through 3 of those hammerings, it was tough watch at times. The FA Cup roared back into life, I thought, on Sunday. It's just a pity we don't have those replays for Tamworth, for example.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm not an FA Cup replay kind of fan or supporter, but there's absolutely a place for it for the teams like Tamworth and stuff. You know, they could have a huge payday, a game-changing day at Spurs if they were able to or allowed to do so. But yeah, I mean, I dipped in and out of the FA Cup this weekend, if I'm honest, Dan. It's not really for me these days. I've got focus elsewhere. But yeah, I did tune in for the last half hour of that Tamworth Spurs game, sort of potentially seeing a historic upset, really. And yeah, I think when I saw the team sheet from Tottenham, I thought, okay, yeah, there's no upset there. They're clearly going pretty strong and quite keen to win, but it didn't materialise. And poor old Timo Werner with a couple of gilt-edged misses. And it's just a shame for Tamworth that goal in extra time to give Spurs the lead was such a scrappy one. Yeah, a bit of a shame, but yeah, the big boys are through pretty much. So yeah, it's kind of business as usual, I guess.
Yeah, Adrian, to put a bit of context to Tamworth, there was a big drift on them because of how strong Spurs went. And a lot of people, maybe you bet with the sports books that listen, would have seen 20-1, 25-1 on Matchbook at the off. They're 55.0 to win the game. And I know a few Arsenal mates of mine that put it on for the crack, with their quote being, no one should be 55.0 to beat this Tottenham Hotspur team.
Yeah. Look, I'm guessing on the handicap, there was some money to be made. You know, in that particular game, yeah, the gap is huge now. You saw what happened with City against Salford. You know, 8-0, remarkable, really. And Salford are a stronger side than Tamworth. So yeah, it was a very unpredictable result. But yeah, fair play to Tamworth. I do think playing at home on an artificial surface was definitely a plus for them. But yeah, it's a bit embarrassing from Spurs. I know that they're through. It's embarrassing, a non-league team. You had 90 minutes to put them away, and it was goalless. And you look at the shot count as well. I think it was 13-9 to Spurs. It was effectively an even 90 minutes, which I, as an Arsenal supporter, found quite funny, despite our own issues, of which we will no doubt get to shortly.
We will, don't worry. Yeah, I was only myself and Mark were chatting off air just about how dominated the timeline is about Arsenal, so I thought we'd speak a bit about Tottenham there. It's interesting. The first game we are going to cover is Arsenal versus Spurs, so we've nowhere to hide, Adrian. So we will start with that game. It is a cracking weekend or midweek action. Forest Liverpool Tuesday night. We'll get to that. Brentford City and Everton versus Villa. Well, we'll start with Arsenal versus Spurs and take a look at the betting that we currently have on matchbook.com. Arsenal are 144 favourites. Spurs a big price, 7.6. More on that in a second. Draw is 5.4. Both teams to score, yes. Big price, probably the biggest for a Spurs game, 174. The Asian handicap line would see Spurs get a 1.25 goal head start at 2.02. And the goal line currently standing at 3.5. But the under's favoured at 176. So maybe Adrian start with that Arsenal Manchester United game. I mean, more on the FA Cup. I think we saw how much it still matters. It was great having these games on free. I'm an old school kind of guy. This game was on BBC One, prime time. It felt like a good proper cup tie. And from 60 minutes onwards, the game took a life of its own. We can't forget obviously how dreadful that first half was, just in terms of a spectacle.
Yeah, no, it was a poor first half, but yeah, no, it came alive, didn't it? I think United kind of sport the first half with their persistent fouling. I mean, it's foul after foul after foul, wasn't it? But look, yeah, it was a good cup tie in the end. Obviously, it didn't go Arsenal's way, despite having a lot of chances. I think it's a little bit embarrassing for the Gunners not to put Manchester United to bed when they had the man advantage for so long. When you add in the added time, it was about 70 minutes where United had a man less. So, not great from Arsenal's point of view to only get the one goal in that period. So many missed opportunities, just like it was against Newcastle United. So I think Arsenal got to hope that they've got the bad finishing out of the way in the cup competitions and that they can deliver in the Premier League. I was looking at some of the numbers actually, and Arsenal's chance conversion in the Premier League is actually very good. they're ranked third if you exclude block shots, fifth if you include them. Big chance conversion, sixth. Liverpool are fifth, and the other four are all clubs in the bottom half. So, finishing hasn't been Arsenal's issue this season, but it has been this week. That is for sure. And yeah, look, this is a high pressure game, Daniel. You know this. As an Arsenal supporter, it's kind of season on the line type of game. And how's that going to impact the team? Is it going to raise them to a higher level, or is it going to inhibit Arsenal and make the team a little bit nervous? We'll have to wait and see. But it's a big game for Mikel Arteta and for the players. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see what sort of game unfolds.
And for you, in terms of a bet here, Adrian, are you leaning towards that Spurs side away at the Emirates just based on the weekend's action and given the amount of games?
Look, the bet I want to put up is Arsenal to win and both teams to score. That's 2.84 because I do think there's a strong possibility of that. But having been at Emirates this week for both those games, I can't, in good faith, tip it up because Arsenal frustrated everybody with the finishing. So that's the most likely scenario. I think both teams to score is a great shout. At 1.74, I think it's very backable because what will happen? Tottenham will not change the way they play. They will look to sort of prey on any Arsenal weaknesses. I think they'll come out of the blocks really fast, Tottenham, and look to take the lead and turn Emirates into a sort of toxic environment. That'll be their game plan. And they're good enough, aren't they, going forward to score goals? And they didn't score in 90 minutes against Tamworth, but normally they're very, very good, Tottenham, in terms of scoring goals. Remember, they did score 4 at the Etihad, and they did score 3 at Old Trafford, 5 not so long ago at St Mary's. I don't know if you can count that really, but if the right Spurs turn up, they can score goals home and away. There's no doubt about that. Arsenal should be able to score against this makeshift Spurs defence, should be able to score multiple goals against this makeshift Tottenham defence. So I think both teams to score is probably my number one pick at 1.74. But if you're looking for a little bit more value, a bit more juice, it pains me to say it, but I think Tottenham plus 1.25 is one to potentially look at. Arsenal fans might want to do it as a jinx, I don't know. But at 2.02, I think there's a good value. I think Spurs are priced a bit big here, and with the 1.25 handicap, it does mean Arsenal have to win by 2 for us to lose that bet. And I don't know whether Arsenal will win by 2 here. It's a derby. Derby games are volatile. They're unpredictable. I think Spurs tactically are made for Arsenal. Of course they are, because they won't low block it. They'll push forward. They'll leave gaps, and Arsenal will hopefully, punish them. But given the pressure of the game, given what's happened this week, it feels a stretch in my head to tip Arsenal to win by two or more goals. I can't do it. So yeah, look, Tottenham plus 1.25 is a reluctant choice. But yeah, you've got to look at the numbers, and I think Spurs are capable of making this a competitive match.
Okay, if you haven't bet on the Asian handicap before, exchanges and matchbook in particular, great place to do a half your stake on one plus 1.0 Spurs and half your stake on plus 1.5 if you back Spurs at plus 1.25. For what it's worth, Mark, I agree with a lot of agents. Says I can see a frustrating night coming up on Wednesday night. I'd almost ignore the Spurs result over the weekend, and that 7.4 initial price stood out to me as too big. But you ultimately disagree on that.
Yeah, I just think Arsenal, just strip it back. Arsenal are the better team. Yes, results recently in the last week haven't been going in that direction, but as Adrian's outlined, they did a lot right in both of those 2 fixtures. It's just the lack of cutting edge in the final third, which has been letting them down. 23 shots against Newcastle, just 3 on target. 26 against United, 7 on target in 120 minutes, but 22 of those attempts were inside the penalty area. So they're getting into good positions, but I just think ultimately Arsenal, on balance to play, probably do draw that game against Newcastle or better. They do probably win that game against United. So they're not far off being, in a good place right now. And maybe a big derby game at home, under the lights will kind of get, will allow them to sort of play more to their potential, really. They're still second on expected points in the Premier League. They're still second in terms of non-penalty XG conceded. So we still know their defensive process is strong. A lot of what they're doing is right. The only issue I have really is kind of the issue that we talked about throughout the season is the open play opportunities created and the lack of them, really, compared to some of their sort of rivals towards the top end of the division. That's kind of been balanced out by their set piece proficiency, which will be a key asset against a Tottenham team who don't ever look comfortable defending set pieces. But the big element here to be pro Arsenal for me is just the team news, because whilst Kinski's kind of solved the goalkeeping issues for Spurs, he's made a very promising start. You're still playing with just one first choice defender. Bentancur's out now as well again, so you've got Van der Ven, Romero, Udogie and Ben Davies all missing. Pedro Porro being that only defender available, who's more or less a winger most of the times. Spurs have struggled in this fixture recently too, 4 defeats in 5, 3 defeats in the last 4 at the Emirates as well. It's interesting to note as well that they've lost all of their matches against the top 5 this season. They've actually lost 7 of 8 when facing the top 7. And yeah, I mean, we say it almost every week now, don't we? What Spurs are we going to get? Is it the side that turned over Liverpool last week, or is it the side who kind of just flopped and flailed in other fixtures? I kind of go back to the reverse match at the Emirates when Arsenal just kind of squeezed the life out of Spurs and did what was necessary. And I think something similar could be in the offing here. And look, Tottenham made a great start to the campaign, and injuries have obviously derailed them. But if you look at their performance data, in the first sort of 8 to 10 weeks, they're up there with the best in the Premier League. They're now down in 10th on expected points and expected goals ratio across the whole campaign. So they're a mid-table team based on performances. Exclude penalties, and only 4 sides are allowing a worse XG figure against. And ultimately, I just think that those defensive flaws will be their downfall in this particular game. So, I'm quite happy to have Arsenal to win the game, just on the nose, alongside what I wanted was cards, but none of the cards markets are out yet. So I'm going to combine it with over 9.5 corners, which has landed in 6 of Arsenal's 9 at the Emirates, 6 of Spurs' 9 away. And the corner tallies in North London derby fixtures since Postecoglou arrived have read 15, 14, 13. We know Spurs love corners, both for and against. Arsenal at the Emirates are normally pretty good and solid for racking them up as well. So, we just need 10 from both teams combined there, alongside Arsenal to win the game. I put it in the sheet at 194. It's actually even money now, so even better. So, yeah, evens on Arsenal to win and over 9.5 corners.
Yeah, still not enough for myself and Adrian. Going to lock in Spurs on the Asian handicap. We've out with our eyes, Mark. We've watched the last couple of weeks. Maybe a little bit too close to this, Adrian. Who knows? But maybe we've double jinxed as well, which would be no harm. To be fair, we need and are due a win. Now the title race. We move on to the 4th favourites for the title here versus the favourites, and Nottingham Forest are 5.7. Bit of a drift this morning. Liverpool 169. The draw is 4.3. Both teams to score, yes, 173. The Asian handicap line will see Forest get a 3/4 goal head start at the City Ground at 2.12. 2.5 is the total, Mark, and the over is at 1.7. I don't know how much you keep up to date, Mark, with the outright markets on the exchanges. I did look on Matchbook when after Forest's win against Wolves, I think they're around 55.0 for the league. Someone's been backing on Matchbook because we've seen a bit of money. They're now into 40.0. Does a win against Liverpool here propel them into an outside bet for the title?
I'm never ever going to say never, because we've seen Leicester do it. So you never can say never, but I think it's still unlikely. There obviously are similarities between themselves and the sort of East Midland rivals. That fairy tale season. It's been a memorable campaign already. Quite a remarkable turnaround from a team who finished one place above the bottom 3 last season. So to be in the top 3 at this stage, level on points of Arsenal, quite remarkable really. 6 wins on the spin, beating United, Villa, Brentford, Spurs, Everton, and Wolves. Some decent sides in there, but the highest placed team right now is 8th. So this will obviously be a much tougher test. Before that 6-match winning streak, they were turned over 3 times by top 6 sides across November and December. 3-1 at home to Newcastle, 3-0 at Arsenal and City also. But what's become very, very clear with Forest so far this season, for me at least, is the importance of the opening goal. I said it on the show a couple of weeks back. Forest have now scored the opener in 16 of their 20 Premier League games this season, which is astonishing, really. And when they do, it just allows them to sit back in their shape and challenge teams to break down that low block. And they offer plenty of kind of counter-attacking threat and options and opportunity through transitions as well. But defensively, we know they've been superbly organised throughout the campaign. They've got a rock-solid centre-back pairing too. And I think most sides have struggled to open them up after falling behind. And Liverpool, of course, lost in this reverse game at Anfield. The decisive goal came fairly late on, but Forest were as good as any side who've been to Anfield this season in terms of nullifying the Liverpool attack. So this isn't going to be an easy game for Liverpool whatsoever. Matches between these two teams have been very competitive since Forest returned to the top flight. 4 of the last 6 have ended 1-0 either way. I wouldn't be too surprised to see another low goal tally in this game, actually. Saying that, I did have Liverpool down here. I did my sort of prep on Sunday night. Liverpool were 177 on Matchbook Exchange at the time. And although that's a nice price, actually, I'm going to back that. But it's been gobbled well up now. They're well below 1.7. So I'm going to flip it around, actually. I had Forest in at +1 on the Asian handicap at 177. It's now 184 following that drift you mentioned there, Dan. And that's a bet that requires Liverpool to win this match by multiple goals for the selection to lose. And I like this because Liverpool haven't had it their own way over the last month, actually. They did smash Spurs and West Ham, both flawed sides at the time. Drew against Newcastle, Fulham and Man United. Lost to Spurs, obviously, last week as well. And they've conceded 13 goals in the last 10 across all comps. So if Forest can get a goal here, now Liverpool have leaked twice or more in 4 of the last 5 away in the Premier League. If Forest can score just 1, it requires Liverpool to score 3 or more for the bet to lose. Now, clearly, they are capable. They've scored 27 goals on their travels. They've scored twice or more in each of the last 12 in the Premier League. But I think doing so against the Forest side, who've kept 9 clean sheets in 20 Premier League games with the 3rd best non-penalty expected goals figure against, won't be easy. Just on that defensive record, they have and will improve with Konate back in the side. But I just think this is unlikely to escalate into a high-scoring shootout. And if the goal expectancy is slightly low, you want to be with the underdogs with a big handicap start in a match which you don't believe will kind of play out in a sort of basketball style game. So I'll happily have a chance here on Forest +1 at 184.
Okay, good case from Mark. And Adrian, same question to you. I mean, loads of people have made that Leicester City comparison, and I have felt for a long time this season there isn't one true standout team, albeit Liverpool have been very impressive, and that does bring someone like a Nottingham Forest that can maybe get to the late 70s, that could maybe sneak a Premier League title.
Yeah. I wrote a piece for the Premier League on this last week. I think it came out late last week over the weekend. So if anyone wants to read it, it's on there. Comparing, Forest with Leicester, actually. And there are a number of similarities, obviously stylistically. Not possession-based teams, good on the break. Wood and Vardy, actually near identical records at this stage. Wood is matching Vardy from that title season. Sort of goal for goal. Defensive solidity is obviously a big factor. No one's making mistakes. There've been 0 errors leading to goals by Nottingham Forest players this season. Leicester in that title winning season had 1. So if you don't gift goals to the opposition, if you don't make mistakes, it's hard for them. And Mark's absolutely right to bring up those good starts. Where they've led in 16 of 20. That's remarkable. They've trailed for fewer minutes than any other Premier League team this season. It is bonkers. But they deserve respect. And ahead of this game, I think they'll get plenty of that. I think Mark made a really good case for the Forest +1, actually. I've gone for something slightly different where you don't really have to sort of worry about who wins. I'm going to go with both teams to score an under 4.5. It's 2.2, which I think is a lovely jump from 1.73, which is both teams to score. That's a nice, juicy jump because, I mean, Mark explained why he doesn't think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I completely concur. But I do think there's a potential for both teams to score. Liverpool have scored at least twice in each of their last 12 Premier League games. Okay, didn't score at Spurs, did they? But in the Cup. But, they used to scoring multiple goals. Now, it'd be harder for them against Forest because Forest are brilliant at the back. 45% of their matches they've kept clean sheets in, but you still fancy them to score at the City Ground, even if it's just the 1. And Liverpool have looked less solid. I think that it's fair to say of late. Drawn a lot of games. the Fulham draw at home. There was another one, wasn't there? And I don't think they're as watertight as certainly as they were early on in the season, where they just didn't let in any goals at all. 8 of 9 matches for Liverpool against top half sides have gone under 4.5 goals this season. 5 of their 9 away games, full stop, have gone under 4.5 goals as well. 19 of 20 Nottingham Forest matches have gone under 4.5 goals. It was just that crazy one at Old Trafford that bucked the trend. I think we know what sort of game this is going to be. They're going to play counter-attack football in Nottingham Forest. They're going to sit in their shape, try and frustrate, and they've got the tools to certainly break on Liverpool. And on the both teams to score angle, Forest have only failed to score in 3 matches this season. Arsenal and City away, you can kind of get that. And at home to Fulham, which was a rare off day. So they're used to scoring goals themselves. They scored at Anfield. I think they can score again here. So yeah, both teams are scoring under 4.5. Nice price here, 2.2.
Okay, interesting angle there. It brings in a lot of correct scores. Lean towards Mark on Forest +1 at 184 now, the updated price on that one. Let's move on to Brentford versus Manchester City and take a look at the betting. We currently have a match.com. Brentford 5.3 underdogs. City 167. Is that a good price? Not discussing the sec. Draw 4.6. Both teams to score yes. 152 with the Asian handicap market seeing Brentford get a 1-goal head start and 3.5 the total in this game. Unders slight fav at 1.9. Adrian, I don't want to stick the boot in too much into Brentford's team selection on Saturday, but I can't. It was a disgrace that they're not going for a cup like the FA Cup. I feel like we're picking on them because we said the same on the Carabao Cup, but I think it needs to be pointed out that yes, it doesn't have to be a priority, but like the difference between 12th and 15th that it might end up being for Brentford, I just don't see why they didn't go for the FA Cup.
Yeah, I don't understand it. It's only really pacifying players, isn't it? It's pacifying squad players. It's keeping them interested. It's keeping them sweet. It's keeping them match fit. But you shouldn't do that, to sacrifice the result and progress. And they should be beating Plymouth at home, shouldn't they? The message it sends out is that this match isn't important. And I tell you what, when Wisser came on, I got the feeling he didn't think it was an important game. Have a look back at that goal that Morgan Whittaker scores. His defending is just so bad. Just doesn't try. Very, very lazy. So, that's the issue. But look, they've got a chance to bounce back. It's a big game. And Thomas Frank will clearly demand a reaction. It was embarrassing to lose that game to Plymouth. And in many ways, this is a good fixture for them, isn't it? City will certainly get the focus. And I think they can be competitive here. Definitely. Remember the Arsenal game? They were really defensive, actually, because they obviously, the big thing is Brentford home games are crazy. They attack, they let in goals. They attack, they let in goals, but they outscore pretty much everyone. Well, Arsenal were the first real big team to go there, and it was a different sort of game. They really sat in and put 5 men behind the ball, well, 9 or 10 at times, and camped on the edge of their own box. They were really good on the counter. And then the game changed when Arsenal sort of let them have the ball when they were chasing it. But they set out to be very defensive. And I think they'll do the same against Manchester City, if I'm honest. I think they'll just block up the 18-yard box and say to City, there's no way through. So I think that might lend itself to a different type of game. Home games at Brentford, off the scale in terms of goals. But I think this is a match where you can maybe oppose goals. Under 3.5 always appeals to me because I think that it's a high line. It's not an easy one to beat. And you can get under 3.5 at 1.9. 65% of all Premier League matches this season have been under 3.5 goals. The league average currently stands at 2.98. So it should be the favourite, really, in any match. And Brentford, I think, might come back to the sort of mean, if you know what I mean. They got the best conversion rate in the Premier League as it stands. They've been really lethal, but they might not always be as lethal between now and the end of the season. So I don't see them scoring a lot of goals. Manchester City, obviously they've been lifted. They scored 4 against West Ham, 8 against Salford. Players coming into a bit of form, but away from home, not the most trustworthy. Brentford's not a fixture they particularly love. And this season, 8 of City's 10 away games have gone under 3.5 goals. So they've not cut loose and gone and smashed teams. They've been involved in quite a lot of tight games, and they've struggled to break teams down. And this fixture, by the way, there's a history of quite low-scoring games. 6 of 7 Premier League meetings under 3.5. So I'm going to take out the equation of who's going to win. So I'm not really sure, if I'm honest, who's going to win this. But I think it's the right time to back against goals. So under 3.5, 1.9.
Okay, under 3.5 goals, high line, Mark. Ultimately, you're going to be 4 goals. So what sort of game are you expecting for this one?
Yeah, pretty similar, I guess, to what Adrian's outlining there. We've had the example of when Arsenal went to Brentford fairly recently, and something similar wouldn't be a huge surprise. And yeah, I looked long and hard at this game because Man City's price of 167, 166, ordinarily you just gobble that up and move on. But I'm still not convinced. We've had sort of 3 games where they've won. They beat Leicester, I thought, fairly unconvincingly for the most part. They gave up a lot of big opportunities in that match. They did put West Ham to the sword, but as we know, the Hammers were kind of on the last legs under Lopetegui. And then the Salford match is irrelevant because it was a fringe side in the FA Cup. So if you look at that price, they were 140 on the last trip to Brentford. Arsenal went off about 155 a few weeks back. But we know Arsenal, despite your concerns at the minute, are a different breed to Man City right now. So, my numbers actually make City bigger than 1.7 based on the whole season. That's just taking into account XG and the like. So I'm kind of happy to leave them here, especially as Stones and Rodri and Diaz are missing. Kyle Walker, of course, that episode is playing out in the background as well. I know they're looking to get some bodies in, but I'm just not at the trusting stage of Man City yet. Their biggest problems during that sort of nightmare run did come on their travels. It's 7 defeats in 8 away across all comps. The one win was that Leicester match we referenced. And their biggest vulnerability has been being hit on the break. Nobody has been able to cover Rodri's absence. His sort of instincts for breaking up play, covering that space, protecting the defence. There's a real lack of energy in that midfield, which has often left them exposed. And I look at Brentford, who are in their own sort of funk right now. One win in 7, I think it is. Sort of FA Cup exit as well. They've lost 3 straight at home now when you include that. Home form has been their saviour. But if you look at City's weaknesses, I think Brentford do have the capacity to expose those flaws. And Mbeumo and Visser have scored 16 home league goals between them this season. And just those two have the pace and the power and the punch, I think, to cause problems in transitions. But Arsenal managed the match reasonably well. Definitely did in the second half at least. But in the first half, I did think there were moments when Brentford looked very lively enough to make their mark, and they did. And here they're facing a side that's conceded at least 2 goals in 8 of the last 9 away games. They kept 2 clean sheets and 13 away from home across all competitions. That Leicester game and Slovan Bratislava. They're giving up 1.62 non-penalty expected goals per game across their last 8 in the Premier League. So, I think Brentford can score here, absolutely. So I'm going to back both teams to score alongside Brentford to win 3 corners or more, which comes in at evens. Brentford have won 3 corners or more in 17 of their 20 Premier League games this season, including 9 of 10 at home. They had 4 here against Arsenal. They won 5 at Chelsea, 4 at Spurs, 5 at Villa, 4 at Anfield, and 3 in the reverse game against Man City. And City have actually conceded 3 corners or more in 8 of their 10 away league games, including their last trip to Leicester, where they allowed 4. So if Leicester can rack up 4 at home to City, there's no reason why Brentford can't get 3 themselves. So just going to partner those 2 together and get evens.
Okay, yeah. So both teams to score price 152, big jump to 2.0 with those 3 Brentford corners or more. But we'll go to Adrian's. Not often you can attack a high goal line like that and maybe feel a little bit confident. But under 3.5 goals, 1.9 the podcast selection. Now let's move on to Everton versus Aston Villa. What a game this is. We'll take a look at the betting we have on matchbook.com. Everton 335 under David Moyes to Villa, who are 246. The draw is the same price as Everton win, 335. Both teams to score, yes, 191 favourite. Everton, get a quarter goal head start at 1.9, and 2.5 is the total. Adrian, I want to bring this to you just to get your thoughts on David Moyes. Paul Merson says you should never go back about David Moyes not remembering, of course, that he went back to West Ham and won the Conference League. So I think it
Yes.
never has an opinion like that being destroyed in such a quick space of time, i.e. one tweet. But what did you make of the appointment?
I kind of think it makes sense for
Yeah,
him.
same.
It makes sense for Everton. Like Everton just don't score enough goals, so they just 7 from open play all season. Failed to score in 8 of their last 10 Premier League games. So for me, even though you think, well, they need an attack-minded manager, I would actually go the other way and say they need a good defensive manager, because they don't have to play us to score the goals. So they need to keep things tight, otherwise they're going down. That's the way I would look at it, and I think Moyes will get more of a tune out of them on the break. His West Ham side weren't always boring. They did score goals. They certainly were more threatening than Everton. So yeah, I'm not a huge Moyes fan. Like a lot of people out there love him. I'm not like that, because I think he's quite negative. But at the same time, I do think he's a solid manager, and that's probably what Everton need at the moment. I think he'll get a little bit more juice out of the squad. Hopefully they'll bring some new additions in, and it would just about keep them up. As for this game, I'm feeling less new manager bounce expectations, because my assessment is that Everton fan base is absolutely split down the middle on it. I think, I've heard various people, Everton fans, on podcasts, on shows, on socials, saying that they're delighted with this. And then the other half are saying, no, we really hate the idea of this. We want to move away from it. So, I don't know what the reception will be. I suppose it'll be good, but I don't think, not everyone's sold. And also, he doesn't wave a magic wand. Everton haven't beaten anyone above 14th yet. A lot of draws in there, but they haven't beaten anyone above 14th. That's a fact. I've just told you about how poor they are going forward. And Villa are decent, aren't they? They're not in amazing form. They sort of scrambled past West Ham in the cup. Their away form's been pretty bad, actually. Just 10 of their 32 points this season have come on the road. That's a pretty low share for a side of Villa's quality. And they've lost each of their last 5 Premier League away games. But I don't think they're going to lose at Everton. I just don't. I think Duran's back for this, so they've got a bit more options. They've lost McGinn. I think with Rodgers and Duran and Watkins and maybe Onana back in that midfield, Tielemans is still fit. I think they've got enough to come away with a draw at worst here. Aston Villa, they are unbeaten, by the way. Aston Villa against sides 13th or below. That's home and away. So, they haven't been upset by any of the strugglers so far this season, Villa. And despite that new manager sort of concern, I think they're good enough to go there and get a result. So my pick is Aston Villa double chance. So you got the draw and the Aston Villa win, and under 3.5 goals. That's for obvious reasons, because I think Moyes is clearly going to set up not to be beaten. He's going to be very well organised. Unai Emery, I think, given that they've lost 5 in a row on the road, will be touch more pragmatic as well, maybe. I don't see this being a high-scoring game. Not many matches at Goodison are. So, yeah, Villa double chance, under 3.5, 1.8.
Okay, yes, solid. It seems a solid case for that. Mark, what did you make of David Moyes and maybe getting a new manager bounce here? Like, he will get a good receptions agent, touched on there. And I do think majority of fans will buy into him. He is probably ultimately, it makes sense, and it's probably a good fit for this club right now to get them to the new stadium next season.
I'm not sure. Not a lot really surprises you in football these days, but I was slightly surprised Everton went for Moyes. He's obviously done a very good job at West Ham in 2 spells and helped them in very difficult circumstances. But he has that history of Everton, of course. But I think with new owners, they're clearly just thinking about stabilising and surviving right now. But he is kind of cut from the same cloth as Sean Dyche, right? Like his style, his approach, his pragmatism. There are a lot of similarities, and you probably will get a bit more from Everton now compared to when they were under Dyche. But they're not going to transition into a slick passing machine and look to attack at every opportunity. And it kind of reminded me of West Ham last summer, removing Moyes and taking Lopetegui as the replacement. Like, what are you expecting? There's not going to be like a sea change in approach. And I know they were a little bit late, but there were obviously a lot of murmurings about Graham Potter potentially going to Everton, and they were a little bit late to that party and missed out there. But to kind of have Potter potentially on your shortlist and then opt for Moyes, again, there's not a huge amount of joined up thinking there. But I think in the short term, whether it'll be a boost or a bounce, I'm not sure. But I do think there's certain elements which are definitely very difficult to kind of factor into betting. But, you know, we talk about midweek, under the lights, a fresh start, new owners, David Moyes back. Even if some of the fan base aren't sold, I think the Everton supporters are good enough that when push comes to shove and kickoff starts, they will generate an atmosphere. They will get behind their team. And I do think that will give them a bit of a lift, really, as will the returns of Dwight McNeil and Dominic Calvert-Lewin as well. Gives that attack a bit more of an edge. And yeah, look, their goal scoring record, as Adrian alluded to, is horrendous. Failing to score in 8 of your last 10 is extraordinarily bad, but
disgraceful.
It is. But on the flip side, they're hosting an Aston Villa side with just 2 clean sheets in the league this season, neither of which came away from Villa Park. If you go back to the start of last season, Villa have managed 4 clean sheets in 28 away Premier League matches, conceding 1.86 goals per game. So keeping clean sheets has been a consistent problem for Unai Emery and Aston Villa this season, outside of the Champions League. But with those problems really sort of highlighted away from Villa Park, I think there is an opportunity here to back both teams to score at a really nice price, a price we never get to see often in the Premier League. It's 191 now on Matchbook Exchange, which I think is worth a pop, actually. It's landed in 61% of those 28 Villa away days since the start of last season. We know they've got enough firepower of their own. Jean Duran's back from suspension. They've scored multiple goals in 4 or 5 away days against teams below them in the table, so they all have confidence to at least score here. But yeah, I just think perhaps all the elements combined will give Everton that bit of a boost against a Villa side who don't really convince defensively. So McGinn's missing, isn't he? Ross Barkley's out as well, so that midfield will be broken up a little bit. So yeah, why not Everton to at least get a goal and both teams to score at 191.
Yeah, as Mark says, not often get a price like that on both teams to score, but we'll go back and lean with Adrian Villa double chance under 3.5 goals. Yeah, Yakubu hasn't re-signed for Everton. Just don't see enough goals in that team at the moment. But Mark's opening with Paul Merson and saying you should never go back. Any other bets time here? And before we get on to any other bets, insights.matchbook.com, full recap of all the guys' picks will be available from Monday afternoon. If you are watching or wherever you're watching and listening, take 2 seconds, hit that like button, subscribe and follow completely for free. It's the best no-cost way of supporting what we do here at Matchbook. Go to you, Mark. Back to you here. Goals in Bundesliga. It's been goals heavy throughout the season. A bit of a lull maybe in some of the games this weekend, but you're expecting goals in some of the midweek pictures here, and you picked out one for us.
Yeah, Kiel versus Dortmund should be good fun. Dortmund were decimated in defence on Friday night when they played Leverkusen, the first game back after the winter break. Not just injury, illness as well, hit the camp pretty hard. They were forced to field a makeshift back four, which included 2 youngsters making their first Bundesliga starts, and fullback Julian Ryerson was operating at centre-back and looked massively out of his depth and uncomfortable for the most part. And you know, it went as well as you'd probably expect. They conceded 3 goals in the opening 19 minutes and lost that match. They did at least battle back a little bit, but those issues will have eased slightly ahead of the midweek trip to Kiel, but they're not completely resolved. And look, they've been a ropey defensive outfit for quite some time under Nuri Sahin, and they've conceded in 13 of the last 14 Bundesliga matches. No away league clean sheet since August. But going forward, shouldn't have as many problems. Seru Guirassy back amongst the goals at the weekend or on Friday night. So I think he and Dortmund will be fancying their chances against the worst defence in the division. Kiel have conceded 41 goals in 16 games since promotion, 20 of which came in 8 home league games this season. They've conceded twice or more in 11 or all 11 of their matches against teams in the top 12. So I think there's reason to believe Dortmund can score a couple here at least, but I wouldn't trust them at all to keep the back door shut. So the bet that stood out to me was over 2.5 goals and both teams to score at 1.8. 75% of these 2 teams' combined league games have seen both teams score. It's 11 from 16 for Kiel, 13 from 16 for Dortmund, and they've managed just 4 clean sheets between them in those 32 fixtures. If you look at overs, it's 12 and 11 from 16 respectively. So yeah, fancy goals at both ends, and a high scoring one there at Kiel at 1.8.
Okay, Kiel, that's Kiel Dortmund, Bundesliga, 2.5, over 2.5, and both teams to score 1.8. Adrian, bonus FA Cup action due to postponement over the weekend. Leyton Orient host Derby County, and you think there's a bit of juice in Orient's current price of 2-1, which is 3.0?
I do, yeah. I think there's a chance. Yeah, it's a little bit of a fun one potentially to get behind. Leyton Orient are in brilliant form, absolutely superb. They've won 7 of their last 8 matches in League One, 7 clean sheets in those 8 games as well. Defensively, excellent, and yeah, the confident side, and Derby aren't confident at the moment. They've been losing games. They've lost 3 on the spin. Away from home, they've been a little bit ropey as well all season. Obviously, it's a step up for Derby in the Championship. They've lost 4 of their last 5 away from home, and they've not been scoring very many goals on the road at all. Really, they often get one, but very rarely go beyond that when they're away from Pride Park, Derby. So yeah, I think this has the potential to be an upset. I saw them recently, Derby, and they're not a bad side. They're very hardworking, industrious, good team spirit, etc. Saw them against Leeds, so it'll be a very different type of game against Orient. But they don't have a lot of flair up front. They don't have a massive amount of guile, and I did notice that their bench was markedly weaker. When they brought on the subs, it was a bit of a drop off in level. It's not a deep squad that Paul Warren's got, and you would imagine that he might want to rotate a few players here. Being an FA Cup tie. So if they do rotate, I think that Derby are vulnerable here to Leyton Orient, who are absolutely flying, and they want to keep that winning feeling going, won't they? So yeah, 3.0 on the O's.
Okay, let's lock that in. Leyton Orient to beat Derby midweek 3.0. Mark, back over to you. There is another one you have in any other bets. Sometimes you watch a team and it might not be a win or anything, but you see enough that says to you they might be able to stay up. And I thought Ipswich away against Fulham, they dug in, got a great result there, got a great point. There is something building there slowly from Kieran McKenna, and they take on Brighton this week.
Yeah, I like their chances to avoid defeat, actually. It's 7 points from the last 12 available. They've turned over Chelsea in that time at Portman Road in the last home acting, and then followed it up with that creditable 2-2 draw you mentioned at Fulham. Fancy their chances of getting something out of this match against Brighton, who are draw specialists, aren't they? They're winless in 8, but they've drawn 6 of those. They've only tabled 2 Premier League wins now since mid-October. 2 wins, 7 draws, 3 defeats. And they've also managed just 1 clean sheet in that same 12-game sample. But interestingly enough, they're returning a negative XG supremacy during those 12 games as well, which is quite surprising. You associate Brighton with being kind of very attack-minded, creating opportunities and limiting the opposition, but that's not been the case. And I know Adrian was quite negative about them, I think maybe on the last show or the one before that at least. But yeah, it's the price here, which I think just has to be opposed. Brighton odds on to win away at Ipswich, to me, is massively unappealing. They've only won 6 league games all season. So opposing Brighton to win would have landed in 14 of those 20 fixtures. And it's well renowned now that they tend to struggle against the lesser lights. It's 1 win in 7 against the bottom 7 this season. And they are winless as odds-on favourites all season. And that's a trend that has been in existence for quite some time now, actually. I dug through my odds archives, and Brighton have failed to win when odds-on favourites in 14 of the last 18 Premier League games. They've also won just once as odds-on favourites away from home since August 2023, and that was Sheffield United last season, who were arguably the worst team in the division we've seen in the last 2 campaigns. So, Ipswich, as you mentioned there, Dan, I think I've been looking, for me, quite impressive throughout the campaign, considering their budget. Kieran McKenna's shown an adaptability with this team, and they've lost by multiple goals just 5 times since promotion, which kind of highlights a very competitive nature. So I think they're well capable of picking up at least a share of the spoils here. They're even money with a +half goal start on the Asian handicap, and they're playing a Brighton side who've won 7 times in 29 away going back to the start of last season. So I think it all comes together quite nicely there to back Ipswich to avoid defeat at evens.
Okay, and that's Ipswich double chance, but you bet it on the Asian handicap line. You get the best price out there in the odds checker grade. Ipswich +half a goal versus Brighton. Long shots time. We'll get to Mark in a minute. I'm looking forward to it. Adrian, take it away here. The game we covered already, Forest versus Liverpool, and it ties in a lot with your both teams are scoring under 4.5 goals.
Yeah, it ties in. I'm tipping up the draw here. Yeah, and now you can come at it two ways. 4.3 is the price on the draw, which I think is a good price because I can absolutely picture them taking a point apiece. And do you know what? Liverpool might not see that as a bad point, given they're having a little bit of a wobble themselves, and this is a really tough away game. They'll be desperate not to get beaten, doubled by Forest, of course. Or you could go with a 1-1 at 9.2, so you get a lot more out of it. I mean, I don't see anything going beyond 2-2. I think you could go 0-0, 1-1, or 2-2, but 1-1 sits nicely in the middle. And if I was to pick out a score that I would predict this game to be, it would be 1-1. So 9.2 definitely interests me. Liverpool drew at Arsenal and Newcastle, and this hasn't been really spoken about enough. They're the only away games they've had against the top half. They haven't beaten anyone away from home in the top half. They've got a lot of tough, tricky fixtures to come, Liverpool. Recently, of course, drew at home with Fulham and Manchester United. Forest have trailed for just 14% of the season. They often score first, as we discussed. And this is an interesting stat. Forest have conceded 1 or less in 15 of 20 games. Now, Liverpool obviously are used to scoring multiple goals, but if anyone can stop them, it might be Nottingham Forest. So, yeah, the 1-1 really appeals to me. But if you want to play it safe, 4.3 on the draw is fine as well.
Yeah, that's out to 9.4 if you want the 1-1, a full point bigger than the general price on the sportsbook, 8.4. So well worth taking that on Matchbook at time recording, and it probably will be there right up until kickoff Adrian splitting his take with the draw as well, 4.3. Now, Mark, a lot of people see these markets that you're about to allude on, so let you lead the way, and might think they're muggy markets in some way, but you can eke out some value. We've done it a lot with the bet builders this season, as we've spoken about on the show. But this one here, talk to the listeners a bit about why you think this is there's a bit of value in this bet here, because myself and Adrian can see this happening, I guess, albeit our concerns about the Arsenal.
So the bet is Gabriel to score a header against Tottenham, which is coming in at 9-1, 10.0 on Matchbook via the bet builder. I did struggle a little bit with my long shot this midweek. I did outline Leyton Orient in some way to beat Derby, actually, which Adrian's already mentioned. Just couldn't really get it into sort of long shot territory, really. So I've gone down this route, and yeah, I was really annoyed actually. Gabriel scored on Sunday in the FA Cup against United, because it's not often he scores twice in successive matches. However, this bet obviously won in the reverse game against Tottenham. It was the only goal of the game. Gabriel scored the header for Arsenal to win the game 1-0. It's one of 3 headers he scored in 18 Premier League appearances this season, which is a 16% hit rate, which immediately, small sample alert, obviously, would suggest there's a bit of value here. But he's had 14 headed attempts in his 18 Premier League games this season, which is a brilliant strike rate in terms of actually getting headed attempts at goal. We all know about Arsenal's set-piece proficiency. He is the number 1 target from those dead ball situations. And it just feels like a nice matchup, actually, because Spurs have had long-running issues defending set pieces. They're allowing 0.37 expected goals per game on average from dead ball situations in the Premier League this season. They're allowing just shy of 4 attempts per game from set pieces per game. And I looked at the last 12 centre-backs to face Spurs. 8 of them have had an attempt with their head against Tottenham in the Premier League. That includes both of Wolves and both of Southampton's centre-backs, all having headed attempts against Spurs in more recent matches. So I think it's 5 from the last 6 as well in the Premier League. So, I think all the numbers sort of suggest that Gabriel should be getting his head on an attempt this midweek. And let's just hope he hits the back of the net with it. So, yeah, we'll have a 9-1 winner.
Yeah, look, backed up with stats, Adrian. It's
picture it now, can't you? Yeah, look,
you can.
I'll tell you what, Arsenal's corners will have to be better than they were yesterday. Too many loopy ones towards the far stick. But I'm pretty sure Declan Rice will start. Well, I'm near certain Declan Rice will start against Tottenham. His delivery is a different class, but we are missing the quality of Saka from the other side. But yeah, it's a good fun one to follow. Yeah, that'll have a lot of appeal.
Yeah, I know. Most people saying about Bukayo Saka, we knew we'd miss him in our attack. We didn't realize he was our attack. So maybe set pieces are the way to break down this Tottenham Hotspur team. Best bet time. And now, Adrian, if you want to, firstly on Amar and Arteta, there is similarities in that his ability to pick up results in big games, like Arteta did on that FA Cup run, buys him a lot of time here. But it's different, I guess, to go to Anfield in the Emirates and play that way versus at home to Southampton, where you have to take the game to them. How do you see this game going?
It's different. Yeah, it is different. But I do feel that there's a little bit of an upward sort of curve with Manchester United. You know, they're stringing some decent performances together now. I was impressed with their togetherness because, you know, Arsenal dominated that game, but they stuck together and they defended pretty well. You know, the back three were by and large very good. Obviously, the wing backs were two very defensive players until that red card where they had to sort of change it for Dalot, who I'm guessing will be suspended, won't he, for this game now. So they'll have to go with a more attack-minded wing back, and that will probably play into their hands because it's Southampton at home. Yeah, and that's where I'm coming from here. Southampton are shocking, aren't they? They're such a bad team. The managerial change has done nothing really for them. Battered, weren't they, by Brentford at home? I mean, that was pretty much the worst result, worst performance, I think, of the season so far from Southampton. And I give them next to no chance, really, at Old Trafford. Man United have only actually had 2 home games against teams below them currently in the league. They won them both, and they won them both to 0. You know, fairly routine home wins. In both those games, they were maybe rode their luck at times, but ultimately they won to 0. And I think they can win to 0 against Southampton. Southampton have blanked in 5 of their last 6 games. This match finished 3-0 to United at St Mary's. And I just think Zurich will go there very defensive because they've just been tonked, haven't they, by 5 by Brentford. Recently as well, Spurs whacked them for the same scoreline, didn't they, in front of their own fans. He's not going to want to go there and be front-footed and leave themselves exposed. So I expect a very defensive performance from Southampton, but ultimately United to have too much and to beat them. Obviously, Man United to beat Southampton is not a good price, but back them to win with a clean sheet and it jumps to 2.26. And for that reason, I've picked it out as my best bet. It feels like decent value.
Okay, that's Thursday night, 133 the price on Manchester United, and it goes up to 226 if you think they'll win without conceding a goal. Now, Mark, bit of a storyline developing in Bundesliga. You mentioned the sickness with Dortmund, but I thought Leverkusen were electric to watch. They're building wins after wins and sneaking themselves back into a title race after a slight slump to the start of the season. I'm been very impressed with them in recent weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've got so much firepower in forward areas, some unbelievable talent. Up there, still have reservations about them as a defensive beast, and I think again we saw that against Dortmund. They are liable to concede goals, and look, 6 Bundesliga wins on the spin has put them, as you say, right back into contention, albeit unlikely with Bayern having that lead at the minute. But defensively, just 2 clean sheets this season in the Bundesliga, and if they are to miss out on defending their title, that's going to be their downfall. But they're back at the Bayer Arena this midweek, and matches there have been pretty wild for the most part this season. I'll read you their Bundesliga results at home this season: 2-1, 2-3, 5-1, 0-0, 4-3, 2-1, 5-2, 2-2. So they've managed just 1 home clean sheet. They've conceded multiple goals in half of their home outings, but it just so happens that they've plundered 22 goals of their own in that same sample. So, you know, they're averaging 2.5 goals per game in the Bundesliga, home or away. There's no doubt about their ability in the final third, but as I say, just a bit concerned about them at the back. And so with that in mind, I'm happy to back both teams to score when they face Mainz this midweek. It's 185 now on the Matchbook Exchange. Mainz are one of the surprise packages in Germany this season. They're up in 5th. They're only 2 points off 3rd. They've won 6 of the last 7 league games. They've scored at least twice in all of those 7 fixtures as well. This season, they've scored in 15 of 18 overall. And quite remarkably, I think, they have played 8 away games and they've scored 3 goals or more in 7 of those 8 away games. They've also scored twice or more in 4 of 6 against the top 8. That includes games against Bayern, Dortmund. They scored 3 goals away at Stuttgart, 3 goals away at Frankfurt. And if we strip out penalties, Leverkusen's home games are averaging 3.05 XG and Mainz's matches 3.07 XG. So it's not often we get to back both teams to score between two goal-heavy teams in the Bundesliga at 185, and so that is the reason it's my best bet of the midweek program.
Okay, updated price 185 for Leverkusen, Mainz, and Manchester United both teams score now 226. The best bet for Adrian. My thanks to both the guys. It's a busy week here on Matchbook. We have a lot going on. The Cheltenham Trail on Tuesday, NFL podcast Wednesday. We will have back with the Premier League podcast, weekend Premier League podcast on Thursday, with the racing podcast back on Thursday, previewing the Clarence House. So do keep an eye on our social channels and enjoy the midweek football. If having a bet on the midweek football with Matchbook, make sure it enhances the enjoyment, but please do so responsibly, and we will chat to you all going well on Thursday. Bye-bye.